All right, we're going to go ahead and get rolling. So, welcome everybody. We are glad to have you. We're going to be talking about modernization of basically service management practices. I think all of you who are on this have probably heard a lot about advancements in technologies around AI and automation, and also advancements in the technologies, improvements in the technologies that you're used to using for managing service. And we'll try to put a point on some of these things and share some examples and how we're seeing this value manifest itself and give you some thoughts and ideas about how to proceed. So, with that, we'll get rolling. So, I am Andrew Graff. I lead product and product strategy here at Team Dynamics. And that gives me an opportunity to talk to lots and lots of organizations and understand how hundreds of organizations are trying to address some of the problems that all of you face. And so it's our role to translate those problems at a macro level into solutions that are cost effective and can be implemented by normal people, not software developers. I'm also joined by Alicia, who is a colleague of mine, who's going to be taking some of the concepts we talk about and putting a visual on them with a demonstration. And it's not to suggest that team dynamics is the exact right solution for you and that, we think without knowing anything about your business we're a fit. What that is going to do is give you a visualization of some of these concepts, help you assess your technology that you currently have and try to determine, hey, can we do this today? And if not, what do we think we want to be able to do? It's really just to help expand your line of thinking and how you think about some of these things. So, the session today is all about what happens when you decide to move to a platform and add capabilities to your service quiver that allow you to move quickly with the business in a no-code way, right? Where you're leveraging the tools you've been leveraging, but adding to that AI and automation and integrations to help reduce cost, reduce complexity, and improve customer stat, and really unburden your team. And what we do is we provide this single platform for enterprise service management that sits on top of an AI and automation layer. And it's all built in a no-code way. So you don't need a team of people to actually keep up with your business needs and actually start innovating for your business, which is something a lot of people are too underwater to do. So I'm going to start with what we're seeing in the market from a challenge and pressure perspective. So the pronounced trends we're seeing are number one, most of the organizations we deal with have seen a huge increase in service volume. Lots of new solutions being implemented. Most organizations have 300 plus application, a lot of shadow IT, and the amount of work that is hitting the desk has increased dramatically. That is partially compounded by remote work. So more people are working remote than ever. I know for our business, that's the case. I think one of the grand discoveries of COVID is, hey, if we don't care that somebody's sitting in our office, we can broaden our pool of candidates pretty dramatically. And we found some fabulous people, right, who weren't where our headquarters are. And the challenge with that, though, is that their needs change, right? And the way you service them changes, and that increases some of the demands. Also, end user expectations are shifting. We find that our customers they want answers or resolution as quickly as possible, right? They only want to talk to or engage with somebody if they feel like they need that, or that the problem is something that's not well understood. And or I will say there are people who just want to talk to somebody. So you have to be able to try to provide both, right? I don't believe in a world where every type of service is going to be automated. There are just certain things that people do best, right? The other thing is the labor market. We're seeing it difficult to hire great people, keep great people, also find ways, and especially to keep great people in a service capacity. And we'll talk about some of the things we're seeing that can be helpful there. And then budgetary squeeze. And this might be the most pronounced, where all of these increases in demand and complexity are not being met with a reciprocal increase in budget. We're often hearing, hey, our budgets are flat. We need to figure out how to deliver high levels of service, right? We're under pressure here, or we have a reduced budget. So how do we meet our customers' expectations, right? A lot of research suggests that anywhere between 50 and 70% of IT's customers are upset with them or frustrated with them. That's a real challenge for most of our customers. So how do you combat that? How do you meet some of these expectations with budgets that are flat or decreasing? So we'll get into this, and I think the good news is I really do believe there's a path to address all these challenges. Now, I should have mentioned this earlier. This is going to be interactive. We're going to have some questions, and this will just help Alicia and I adjust our content a bit. So the first poll here is, what is the biggest challenge facing your service desk today? From that list, right? So is it the service volume? Is it changing end user expectations? Is it supporting remote work? Is it the budgetary squeeze, or is it the labor market? Okay. And let's go ahead and give this, I don't know, 10 more seconds. Okay. Oh, there we go. All right. So hopefully you all can see this. Budgetary squeeze was the biggest, but then end user expectations and then service volume. So I think that's interesting. So 39% budgetary squeeze, 37% end user expectations, and 20% volume, right? That's not unexpected, honestly. I think that pattern tracks. So the next is we'll talk about some of the results. So here are some of the results. These are some of our customers, but implementing some of the capabilities we're talking about today have produced pretty profound impact. And so what I challenge you to do is take a look at some of these and say, okay, well, if we could deflect 60% of our tier one tickets, what would that do for us? Just think it through, right? Like if we had 60% fewer requests hitting the desk, what would that allow us to do with the queue that is there? How much faster could we address it? What could we do from a quality perspective? Could we reappropriate resources to do things that advance the business forward rather than just trying to stay afloat, right? Or what if we were able to respond 50% faster so we could reduce the time to respond significantly? And also, how do we support other departments? So in this case, University of Michigan has 60 departments who can collaborate more effectively because they're using the same service management platform. And then Stockman Bank, which we'll talk about a little bit, but what if we could build automations and integrations 80% faster? Like we see an opportunity, we can jump on it, we can prototype it, we can get it in production quicker without software development skills, right? Think through some of those things on paper, whether or on a whiteboard or on a PowerPoint or Excel. And that'll kind of help give you some food for thought of what as to what you think the value could be for your organization. So the first concept I want to talk about is service agility. So when you think about a no-code platform, one of the best results is that when we see an opportunity to make something better, we can do it now, and it doesn't require a software developer. So if a group needs a new form or we see an opportunity to change a workflow, we can implement it, we can quickly test it, and we can deploy, right? We're finding that these monolithic, huge systems where you need lots of developers and technical resources to make changes aren't keeping with the times. And I don't know how many of you have asked for automations and integrations or work that requires coding on your platform, and you're in the back of the line, right? And how long does it take, and how much business value is lost in the time between you identify needing it and when it gets implemented? So if you think about that no code concept, it's all about how quickly can you deliver, how your time to value, how quickly can you meet diverse needs of different areas of the group and departments, and how quickly when an executive or one of your team members comes up with a great idea, right? How quickly can we take that great idea and put it into action? And how can we evolve the business in that construct? And this is something we focus on day in, day out. I think a lot of people ask, well, tell me, what's the elevator pitch for team dynamics? And it's that we're the best combination of enterprise capability and ease of ownership, right? There are simpler tools, but they're not going to be able to support a business that's evolving, right? A business with complex process needs. There are far more complex and expensive products, right? But that they drain your budget, right? You end up having to dedicate 5, 10, 15 headcount just to keeping them afloat. And I think there's a place for all of those, but we find in our customer base, right? It's businesses that say, look, we have a complex business. There's service across the organization. We have the pressures that I talked about a few slides earlier, and our business is dynamic, right? You can't have cookie cutter out of the box integrations because there are nuances in the way we manage our data, and the system needs to be able to adapt to that. And so we find that the lower end solutions fall on their face pretty quickly, and they need to retool. And then we also find on the other end, at the very complex level, it's great for businesses. If you have 40 people you can dedicate as developers for the platform and you can afford seven figures for licensing, there are other platforms that are probably better fits. Our customers say, look, we don't want to spend that kind of money. We don't think we need to, but we have enterprise needs. That's what we do best. So part of it is how do we make building complex integrations and automations simple, right? So how when you think about processes that can be automated, right, that drain your resources. We'll talk about this a little more, but think about the things that people are just clicking a mouse. They're not using their brain. They're not engaging with a customer to build a relationship or truly understand a complex problem and come up with a solution. They're making a change to Active Directory, right? They're making a change to an application permission. They're taking a step in the onboarding process. Those are the types of things where we can make a huge impact. It's kind of interesting. I'll share an example with Self Regional Healthcare, right? They're a huge network of healthcare providers, and they're constantly onboarding new physicians, new healthcare professionals, and they were doing all these onboarding tasks manually, and it was an enormous drain of their resources. And so they're finding that they're reducing at any given time, they've reduced the queue of that work by 50%. And what used to take days and days and days takes a few clicks. So really, really powerful because in their world, the onboarding, giving healthcare professionals access to the systems they need to is a patient care issue. So incredible, incredible result there. And they don't have any software developers to do this work, right? They have sysadmins and business analysts. So let's start with another poll here. If you could kind of wave the magic wand and automate anything, what's the most painful, right? And we'll give you a list to choose from. So why don't we push that poll? There you go. So onboarding, offboarding, password resets, software provisioning, Active Directory updates, including group management and Entra ID things in there. Or maybe, hey, guess what? You're optimized. You have as much automated as possible. I encourage you to look at your ticketing data and comb through it with the lens of, hey, could this be automated, right? Is this something where people are just clicking a mouse? And then B, should it be automated? Meaning, is it going to do one of a few things? Is it going to at least maintain customer satisfaction where it is, if not improve it? Is it going to save our people time and improve our technician or agent's level of satisfaction? Is it going to improve security or reduce risk? And if you put that lens over it, typically you'll find a bunch of things in the work that your people do that you say, wow, if we could get that off their plate with a combination of automation and AI, that would free up a lot of time and make people a lot happier. So why don't we go ahead and push the results? Okay, onboarding, offboarding, run away, a run. You know what? It's interesting. I think when our customers go live, right? There's always a series of automations, AI and automations that get implemented. And this is one of the most popular. And in researching it, it's usually because A, it's complex and takes a lot of time, but B, it's coordinating across a lot of departments. And the frustration of finger pointing between departments if something doesn't go right is stressful. So it's complex, lots of steps, lots of parties involved. And at the end of the day too, you're dealing with a person who's starting and they don't have a great experience. Offboarding is often, I think, I think the pain is more pronounced in onboarding because offboarding typically requires fewer people. But the other thing about offboarding is the criticality of it, right? Especially in regulated industries, right? If somebody's going to, if there's going to be a separation, we need to make sure in a repeatable, auditable way that the right things have taken place. And when you automate it, you have that log of, hey, guess what? We got notice that this person was separating, either voluntary or involuntary. And here's all the things that happened on these dates and times and whether it was successful or not. So we have evidence that we did the right thing. Password resets, always interesting. I would put another one on here that I think maybe we add later is giving people status of their existing requests. Like that sounds crazy, but we did some recent research and a fair amount of organizations request were over 20% of people just asking about the status of something they've already asked about, which is wild, but that's a great case for using AI and automation. Okay, really interesting. So let's talk now about reducing response times with smart AI and automation. So there's a couple levers that we're seeing our customers pull, and that obviously we're trying to provide the technologies to enable them to do. So the first is the question, hey, how can we resolve more tickets faster without increasing headcount? Okay, and there's a couple ways we do that. That's helping the technicians respond more effectively and also using AI and automation to answer more requests or fulfill more requests. The second is how can we just respond faster, reduce the time, that MTTR, right? Pressure from users so they have less time to wonder where the heck their request is. And then how do we maintain satisfaction? These are all some of the challenges or goals that we're seeing. And keep in mind, most of our clients have 300 applications and they're handling these increased ticketing volumes. It's also interesting too. There was some research Information Week did where 58% of organizations said that they, on average, their team members were spending 2 to 3 months of time a year on activities that could be automated. Let that sink in. And if you break that down to an hours per week, right, the high end of that I think is like 10 hours. That's not that crazy when you think about all the requests that come in. The great news is we can lop off a huge chunk of that. And then you say, okay, gosh, if each technician or agent had 2 to 3 months back, what would they be doing? Would they be cutting through their queue faster? What we found, would customers be happier? What we found in the research, and I was honestly, I was a little skeptical and concerned that, okay, will our customers have higher levels of satisfaction. And what we found was that our customer satisfaction went up because they said that they didn't have to wait for the things that, or they had to wait less for the things that they feel like they shouldn't have to wait for. And that when they needed help, the agents and technicians seemed to have more time to spend with them to thoroughly understand and resolve their issues. And I think that's because the technicians and agents weren't staring at a huge queue of work, right? As big a queue. They felt like they could actually had breathing room to do things right. So the customers more satisfied. And the other thing that was interesting is we found that the agents and technicians were more satisfied because they were doing less mundane work. Really fascinating. So if we think about this, there's a couple ways AI is really changing. We're seeing results 30 to 60% of tickets deflected right up front. So cutting that out of the queue. And that's a combination of AI to answer questions, AI using integration to pull data out of systems to answer questions. So, balances for things like PTO or a balance on a certain account, and then actually automating activities. So I need to change my name. Hey, can I get access to a piece of software? Hey, can I get a hardware replacement? AI paired with integration automation is massively powerful. I think it's a good return if it's consuming your knowledge, right? And being able to answer questions based upon your website content and PDFs and SharePoint content and your knowledge base and governmental regulation sites, if that's germane to your industry, that's valuable. It becomes hyper valuable when you can combine it with automation and integration and not in a simple cookie cutter way. I think what we see out there in the market a lot is a lot of hype around, hey, we've got, we have integration automation. What you find is there's nuances for all those processes that I mentioned that are specific to your business, a certain way you manage data. And if it can't adapt to your business and the specifics of the way you have set up your systems, it just falls flat on its face. And I think that's what we do better than anybody else. The other thing is we saw 80% improved accuracy for technicians responding. And that's using the concept of AI service assistance. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And also a 40 to 90% decrease in the time it takes to respond for a technician. So you're lopping off 30%, 60% of the tickets up front. The ones that do make it through, you're improving accuracy tremendously and responding 40 to 90% faster. So when we think about the tooling for this, and this is a high level diagram of team dynamics, AI and automation tooling, the virtual service agents serve your customers, and that's where you're looking for 60% deflection. The AI Service Assist helps your technician. It leverages your institutional knowledge, it leverages past tickets, it leverages information that's available on the web, it leverages all the content that would be available to the virtual support agent, and then content that's only for internal individuals. And it helps that technician with a response, right? It helps draft a knowledge base article so that if let's say a ticket comes in and there wasn't a piece of knowledge that could answer it, it says, hey, would you like AI to help you draft a knowledge base article? That starts to feed this flywheel that the next time either one of your customers or one of your agents has a similar ticket, now we have a piece of knowledge there, and that flywheel starts to spin and it keeps getting better and better. And then underlying it all is a layer of AI and automation, right? So this platform that enables all this and enables embedded AI and capabilities throughout the whole tooling. So, some people call this type of thing a digital transformation effort where AI is, working on ticket deflection. It's helping resolve faster. It's helping your agents and the virtual service agents take action. So we really think that great integration and automation tooling is as important as a good AI engine, right? LLMs are great at answering questions as long as they're grounded in your data, right? Hallucinations are real. That's something you need to be aware of, and we work with tooling to combat that. But when you combine that with a great integration automation engine, that's where you really start to get power. Gartner released some research in October that said 75% of organizations in the next 3 or 4 years are going to use an integration and automation layer underpinning their AI because it helps provide gating on what AI can see and do, right? And AI doesn't work well unless it has great access to information and access to take action. So think of it as the arms and legs of AI that can put some guardrails around it too. So that's where I think we're best in the industry. Thinking about automating toil, right? I mentioned a couple examples, but I really do encourage you to look at your ticketing data and identify, hey, where is that 2 to 3 months of time hiding? Or maybe it's out in the open. And I share some examples there in the list, but I'm sure you have other examples. The key is, okay, we recognize that there is an issue. How do we fix it? And that's where the no code capabilities come into play. It's not to say it's not technical. I mean, obviously, if you're going to be doing integrations, automations, you have to have an understanding of systems. We find that a sysadmin is great, somebody who's been on tier 2 support. Customers often ask, like, hey, who's the best person to become an AI and automation specialist in our organization? It's typically that person who's a sysadmin. They are on a tier 2. They've been tier 2 support. They're technically curious, right? They're the people who say, hey, you know what? I saw that problem and I taught myself some scripting over the weekend to try to fix it. Everyone has that person. And they're the person who's going to their managers and saying, hey, what does my career look like here? Well, what's next? And the manager's sitting saying, gosh, I really want to keep this person. Kelly's so great, but there's already a manager. That is the perfect person or people to do this. And what you find is when you take someone and put them on this, they make up for the time that they're not spending on directly providing service. They make up for it in spades. It's unbelievable what happens. So when you have that no code capability and you can evolve quickly, you can attack those problems and show meaningful progress. And then if you want to tweak the process, you don't have to wait to do it. And part of that is just being able to get into those other systems. So if you think about your ecosystem, right, of the 300 systems in your organization, which are the ones that are meaningful to providing better service and to your customers and reducing the burden on your team, right? Remember all those challenges you're facing with budget and service volume and customer expectations. What systems are important for that? And what you're going to find too is that you need flexibility because a lot of times what you find in an ITSM platform currently anyway is that they'll say, oh yeah, we can change a permission in Active Directory. But what you find is these processes are more complex typically, and the service management aspect of it when somebody asks a virtual service agent a question or a ticket comes in. That's the inception point for the process. The process is happening not in your ITSM tool, it's happening out in your ecosystem amongst all these other tools. And one tool might need to feed data to another. That's where we really provide a big difference and something to really keep in mind. Just because a service management platform says, oh yeah, we have all these integrations for automations, think through your processes. How can you chain those other systems together to work well with each other, not just one system at a time? And I'll give you a great example of this. So I mentioned Stockman Bank earlier, and what they were doing is they had one of the ITSM platforms, highly capable, but also very, very heavy to own. And they just found that they relied on consultants. And when they were building integrations automations, they shared an example where they needed an automation with Exchange, right? And it was taking them weeks to get these done and costing them about 50,000 bucks each time. They were able to implement the same in an afternoon without a software developer or any consultant. So that's the kind of amplification that I think is valuable to most customers. Now, the last piece here is how do you take these concepts and make it work for the whole organization, right? Facilities have similar issues, human resources, legal, anyone processing service requests, they have similar opportunities. And what's important about this is, especially as organizations become more collaborative, they need to work more fluidly together. I shared that example of Michigan with 60 departments. It's much easier for them to collaborate because they're all on the same platform. But it's also important that each of these groups has tools that match their business. So you can't, I can think of a competitor where you have to explain to human resources like, well, don't use these fields. Those are IT centric, right? Don't worry about, just ignore those. That's problematic. These other organizations want a tool that fits their business. The other big issue is if IT has to build and maintain all these other service applications, it becomes a huge constraining factor. I mean, think about it. Are your teams looking for one more thing to support and do? My guess is probably not. So we figured out pretty quickly that it has to be easy enough to administer so that someone in HR can say, oh, I need another field to this on this form. I want to put a condition in the workflow. They don't need to be technologists to do that. So it takes the burden off of IT, yet IT gets to look like a hero because you're bringing these concepts forward. So what we typically see is IT will help somebody set up the app and they'll train someone to administer it. And then they might provide some support, but it's more hands off. Okay, another another poll here. Are you using enterprise service management today? Do you have a single platform where one to many groups are participating? So let's push this poll. And we have not at all. Nope. There's no platform. We have a little bit, meaning IT's using it and a couple groups, one to two, three to five, or a lot, right? If you're over five groups, I think that's a pretty compelling argument that you have an enterprise service management practice. So let's take a second and fill this out. Okay, let's see the results. Let's see what we got here. All right, so not at all. So great. So this is a concept to think about, and you have a couple groups and 11%, 11%. have 5 plus. So great. So it looks like there's a every area of the spectrum. So I do encourage you, if you're not doing not at all or a couple groups, thinking about, okay, how would we deploy this at scale and how can we reduce burden on IT? So I'll share an ESM example. So this is Casino, Arizona, about 3,500 people. They use this for IT. They use it for AV, security, and housekeeping. Really interesting. They're saying that they've seen a 70% reduction in approval times for things like application access. So someone says, "Hey, I need an application for my job." They're cutting it down dramatically. They also find that in order to prepare for an event, right, they have tickets that have workflows and checklists in them. That happens a lot more fluidly. So an event has housekeeping, right? An event has AV and setup and facilities and security. It helps coordinate across all of these departments. So they're seeing a lot of benefit from that. Okay, so I've talked a lot about automation and AI, right? No code, enterprise service management, and the benefits provided in addressing those pressures we talked about. So this is where I'm going to hand this off to Alicia, and I'm guessing this is going to be everyone's favorite part of this because I'm going to stop talking. So Alicia, I'm going to hand it to you. Why don't you give us an overview, and then we'll jump back and have some time for questions. You can put questions in the questions box in Zoom.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. So I'm going to share my screen. Should be able to see that now. So for today's demo, we're going to start really in our end user portal. We're going to see how you can make it easy for your end users to get that help that they need. Then we're going to switch over to the team member side. We'll look at how AI and automation can really transform that technician workflow, as well as how those multiple teams and departments can utilize team dynamics. So here we are in the portal where your end users can get information and how-to documentation, submit requests, communicate with your team. And then over here in the corner, we've got our virtual service agent. And so right away, we're seeing an automation. We're looking up any outages that we're currently experiencing, and we're immediately notifying our end user. Now, maybe as this end user, I need access to something. So I'm going to say I need access. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to give me a few different options here of, hey, what kind of access do you need here? Now, I'm going to choose this human resources option. Now, just know if this was something that, didn't require approval, we could fully automate the process and just give them that access on the spot. However, being human resources, that's a sensitive group, right? So we want to make sure that we get that proper approval. And so here it's asking me, hey, this group requires an approval. Do you want to place a request for that access? Now I'm going to answer that as yes. And then here it's going to tell us, hey, this ticket has been created. And we're going to come back to this ticket in a little bit once we switch over to that technician view. So it up a notch. What if I say something like, when can I get a new phone? So because it knows who I am, because I'm signed in here, what it's going to do is it's going to really personalize those answers for me. So it's going to go and look up my profile, look through those assets I have, find my phone, and respond accordingly. Now, here it's telling me that, hey, your iPhone is not eligible. However, if I was, it could guide me through that process of creating a ticket for IT to go process that upgrade. So, yeah, we can integrate with team dynamics and all the different record types that we have, but what else? So, just know that the possibilities with this are endless. You are in no way limited to team dynamics. So, just think about all the other systems that your organization uses. So, I can say something like, what's my PTO balance? Now, with that, our virtual service agents can pull from those other systems that you have to pull everything into that one place for your end users. Now, next up, I wanted to switch over to that team member perspective. And so, first, I wanted to take a look at that ticket that we submitted just a second ago when we said, I want to, I need more access. I want to be added to that HR group. So, with that, we said we wanted that approval before actually granting that access. So you can see that we are currently waiting on that approval here. Now, if we open up this workflow, first, we had that approval, and then within that workflow, we can automate that process through this iPass step. So, in this specific step here, we are actually reaching out to Active Directory to add the user to that appropriate group. So, the great thing about these workflows is that you can have those manual steps where you need them, but you can automate everything else. So speaking of this iPass, in the poll that Andrew did earlier, onboarding was something that a lot of you wanted to automate. So I'm going to switch over to that iPass platform real quick here. And so this is just a quick glimpse into that drag and drop builder here, where you can do things like, for onboarding, create users in Active Directory. You can give that role-based access. And we've got hundreds of connectors out to different third-party systems. And so you can build those integrations in a way that works for your organization without the need to code or script. Now, let's take a look at another ticket here. Now, maybe this one came in by email or through a generic ticket link, and it wasn't categorized correctly. So, how can AI help us with this? Now, we have our AI suggested fields, and what they're going to do is look at the context of that ticket and recommend the most relevant values for fields such as your form, your service, the type, the priority, the assignment group. So this is available during that ticket creation or editing like we're seeing here, all based on your organization's historical ticket patterns. And so it learns how your organization actually works and uses that insight, leading to those faster technician decisions, improved consistency, higher quality ticket data, and really a strong foundation for future automation without totally removing that human or that human control or changing your workflows. And then in addition to that, we also have our AI ticket agent. And so this is going to analyze that ticket information and it's going to compare it against our knowledge base, previous tickets in our environment, different response templates, and outside websites that you've ingested to really give us a head start on responding to that ticket. So here you can see those knowledge base articles that it found. You can also see previous relevant tickets. So by giving those quick links, those technicians can easily access those without having to go in and search. And even your new technicians can get access to that information that they don't yet know because they just haven't been there very long. And then using all that information that was ingested, it's going to give us a suggested response, of course, formatted in a way that we can really use it as is. So far we've been seeing that our AI ticket agent alone can reduce that time spent on tickets by 40 to 90%. Now, the last thing Andrew talked about was ESM. So, what does that look like? Now, here I am signed in as someone who has access to everything. And so I wanted to show you a couple of things here. Now, across the top, we have what we call ticketing applications. And so, every department can really have their own application or think of it like a bucket of tickets. So in human resources, we have things like HR requests and cases. In marketing, we have website services and media. And then in facilities, we've got things like custodial services and work orders and preventative maintenance. So you can really set up that nomenclature that works best for each department. And each of these different applications can also have separate statuses, forms, workflows, automations. It gives each department a lot of flexibility in how they need it set up and how they want it to work. So today we've seen how you can shift left and automate processes for your end users, how to use AI and automation to help your team do more with less, and lastly, how multiple departments can utilize team dynamics while really maintaining control in how they want to work. So with that, Andrew, I will pass it back over to you.
Great. Thanks, Alicia. Let me go ahead and get my screen share back up. Okay, excellent. All right, so time for some questions. We have one here. Is ESM part of the tool or is it additional cost? So ESM, the ability to create non-IT service applications is part of the tool. The price increases depending on your users. So, for example, if you added 15 people in HR, you would pay for those 15 people, but there is no fee for saying, okay, first we need to enable HR and then you have license fees. It's just part of the license. People can have one-to-many applications. And if I'm in IT, it's really common that I might have access to a couple applications. So the security team might have an application. Maybe I'm on that team, but we also have our IT service management. It doesn't cost more for a user to be part of more than one application either. Okay. I don't see it. Okay, hold on. I get one here. A question. Someone says, "Hey, does TDX integrate with AD easily?" Yeah, we do have a connector for Active Directory. Um, for that, so you should not need an engineer to do that. And then another user asked, like, hey, can the system integrate with the employee system that SAP uses called TMC? I don't know offhand if we have an out-of-the-box connector for TMC, but what I will say is that integration automation platform, if you have access to their API, we can basically connectorize it, so it can be used as if there was an out-of-the-box connector there, and that's something that you can do fairly easily on that platform. A question I often get, I don't see it here, is, hey, where do we start, right? We talked about how AI and automation can help. The first is trying to identify the organizations I see who do this best is they identify where they can make the most impact initially. So what's the low-hanging fruit where everyone involved in that process is frustrated, right? The people delivering the service get frustrated, the people receiving the service get frustrated. Those are great candidates. Look at your ticketing data. Identify those types of things where a customer should be able to get an answer without talking to somebody. And it's not additive to have to make them wait. It's not adding security, right? It's not improving their satisfaction. It's not improving the satisfaction of technicians. You can make a list of those. Then you say, okay, well, how do we do this? And often people say, well, to stand up a virtual support agent, what if my knowledge data is all over the place, right? Well, I think there's the fear like, oh gosh, do we have to have a huge knowledge initiative where we have to revamp everything and consolidate it to make this work? And the answer is typically no. If you look at those top requests or the top types of things you think you could serve via AI and automation, you can typically say, okay, I need to have a set of good knowledge base articles to address those things, or a set of integrations, um, or I need evidence, properly formed tickets, 10 examples, 20 examples of properly formed tickets to get answers, right? I got to look at the history and just ingest that. And I think the other key thing is when you do that, you might say, well, what if the conversational AI agent or the AI services doesn't know everything? That's okay, so long as in the case of conversational AI, it very quickly admits that and says, hey, I don't have an answer, but let me help you create a request, or let me hand you off to a live agent, which we also have in the conversational AI, so that there's a seamless transition to that. That I think is really, really important that that customer has a good experience. And then you're going to start seeing, well, what are the types of questions and requests where conversational AI doesn't have an answer? And then you can start feeding in the right knowledge or feeding in the right automations, et cetera. So I think that approach is a good way to kind of start simple and impactful and mature. Because what we have found is when you get momentum and everyone involved in that service interaction who's using AI and automation is like, wow, this is way better. Then getting the next one implemented a little easier, and the one after that's a little easier, and the one after that's a little easier. So it doesn't look like there are any more questions. I do have two more things to talk about. The first is that we are having an IT Asset Management Day. It's a live virtual event. You can register at our websites, and you'll be hearing from all sorts of different organizations about how we can how you can think about IT asset management and in today's world. So please go ahead and register. And if you think of questions after this webinar that you wish you'd asked, or if you're interested in learning more, you can always go to teamdynamics.com, submit a request. We'd be happy to talk to you about any of this stuff, share ideas. And if you're an existing customer, you can talk to your customer success team to get more information. So with that, I think we'll bring it to a close. Alicia, thank you very much. And everyone, you get a little time back in your day. So thank you.